Second podcast of today.
Yeah.
Episode 18.
Episode 18. We are here with my good friend, Jeff.
What's happening?
Jeff.
Well, introduce him a little bit more.
Jeff Wolf. I don't know.
How do you know Jeff?
What's your social?
My good friend Jeff. The Flexible.
No, the Flexible. Yeah, that's much better. But Jeff and I go way back when we've talked about it, I think, multiple times on the pod, just kind of how I got started. And basically the first thing I did was drop out of college and move to Clearwater because I wanted to work out. Well, I wanted to move to Florida because it was sunny, because I'm a sun worshiper. And but then I found ATG and Ben, and I had knee problems from college football, whatever. And I was just like, I'm going to go to Clearwater because I want to work out at the gym and like fix my stuff. And I didn't even know you then, but then I met you throughout the process kind of slowly, and then Jeff became my boy. That was like my only friend, like the first 6 months, other than like maybe like one or two other guys that worked at the gym. Like Jeff was the only person I'd really talk to or hang out with because he was a trainer there and did a lot of personal training. Got me into that.
That's kind of the funny part about it, right? Is like a lot of people don't realize that Ben at that point was actually very hands off with ATG, like the actual gym.
Yeah.
It was actually like everyone else was running it except Ben.
Yeah.
So like Ben was actually probably the least seen like within the actual context of the gym and training people, and everyone was actually way more involved in that process. Remember you, Marcel, like me, Derek, like that was kind of the core sort of group of trainers that was like training people at the time. And
all those guys.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, so that's how we met, and just, you kind of got me into the personal training stuff when I was working just like the gym floor kind of thing, and worked with some of your clients, whatever, and then I started doing the women's class.
That's right. Was a fan favorite.
Yeah, you helped me with Jeff and I ran it.
Logan was a fan favorite.
19 or 20-year-old Logan ran a women's class like 3 days a week.
What age women?
30 to 40.
Like middle-aged. Yeah, like middle-aged.
You were a fan favorite, why?
Oh, they just thought he was so cute.
Yeah, just a little baby-faced boy in there, putting him through the ringer, dispelling all the bullshit myths that somehow women just get so much bullshit.
No, you know how he is.
Yeah.
It's just, you know what they liked is they liked his like casual aura. Like I think like some of the, like myself, I probably took things like a little bit more seriously. Yep. Not to say he didn't take what he did seriously, but like he kind of like he is now.
I can definitely see that because sometimes him and I clash with like our business or whatever. We're like chatting about things. I'm definitely more serious, for sure. Yeah. And he's definitely more casual. And he'd be like, Nick, what the fuck, dude? I'm just like, bro, we need to get this done. But
and I think for like a middle-aged female market, that works really well for them because they're not intimidated by, they're like, oh, this is like cool guys in here, like lifting weights with us,
But we know how you got there.
Yeah,
we know how you got there, but how did you kind of get to that? Because I don't really know your story, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, we met back a month ago here and whatnot, and I see you got this awesome gym here. But how did that kind of like develop?
So I was actually working for, funny story. So I'm trying to think how far back we should go. Okay. So I actually used to work in sales, like high-end luxury sales.
What were you selling?
Like at one point I was selling watches, like high-end luxury watches for like a Swiss watch company.
Okay.
That was like the last big sales job. Yeah, like watches with like $100K, like price tag. So like one of my clients was the VP of TD Bank and like stuff like that, like really high-end. Honestly, that level of sales is like pretty easy because the ticket's so high and the guys coming in, if they're already kind of sold on what they're there to get.
Like, all right, dude, you got my paddock.
Yeah, basically.
There's a lot of scarcity too there, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because the company that I worked for, there was like limited model makes, right? So there was only like 10 in the world and stuff like that. So it was really interesting. It was a really interesting market. But my whole basically professional background up at that point was always sales. But fitness has always been there due to just being an athlete and then transitioning from like, I didn't go to college to play sports. So I basically just transitioned into CrossFit and variations out of CrossFit, like gymnastics, strength training and stuff. And I worked for a physical therapist, but I was actually had a sales job and I was just training like kind of on the side at the time, like a part-time job. And then I had someone here locally who, she used to work at a gym down on Clearwater Beach that isn't there anymore. And she actually like found me on Instagram because I would post a lot of fitness stuff on Instagram at the time. This was like 8 years ago, maybe longer than that almost. And she basically was like, hey, I'm starting like she had only done personal training for almost like 2 decades. Like she'd been in the game a long time, done physique and stuff like that. And she really got into a lot of the mobility stuff and things like that. And so she wanted to start kind of like building out group classes and things like that. The problem was she couldn't do it because she had a full book of personal training. So she basically brought me up here, found me on Instagram, we met up, chatted, and I basically just like quit my job like on the spot. Was making pretty good money, like 6-figure sales job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like was making pretty good money. Like abandoned my lease on my apartment and just moved up here to take a $15 an hour job at a physical therapist and then start doing like training at part-time as well. So I did that. Worked with her for a few years. That ended up not working out. Through her, I met Ben, who owned ATG at the
which is knees over toes guy.
And then the problem was when I was working with her, we also worked for an online fitness company. And this was kind of the transition, like probably 5 or 6 years ago, before there was really a big market on Instagram for really anything, because Instagram was still kind of fresh. But there were still some like fitness YouTube channels. Like that was kind of the premier way to make money at the time. Like it wasn't really Instagram and stuff like that. It was like the guys that had.
What year is this?
This was 2022. So 2000 and maybe 15.
So like Matt Ogus, Christian Guzman, like those type of guys.
Yeah, like
Athlean X,
Barbell Brigade, Athlean X, even what's his name from St. Pete, Elliot Hall. Like those were kind of like the big names making money in the fitness market at the time, right? But it was on YouTube, and so Instagram had just started to become a thing, and basically what I personally just kind of had this recognition of like and I've kind of looped back to this because obviously I own a gym now, but at the time I was like, man, this brick and mortar gym is kind of a dead end, right? Like it's such a limited market, and Clearwater was not as popular as it is now. Like obviously the past 2 or 3 years, this area has grown a lot, but back then, it wasn't a lot of people. And so what happened was I approached Ben because I knew he had this gym. He had ATG, and he had created like a pretty unique like situation around this gym being exclusive. Like you couldn't train there at the time unless you were like an athlete and you played a specific sport. And so it was a very it was very unique in the sense that like you couldn't just walk in and work out there, right? So he catered to a very specific clientele, and he kind of had created this name for himself as like this exclusive gym that you had to get invited to. So he'd already kind of branded himself in a way that way. And so I approached him to start doing something online. So what happened was he had probably had about 5 or 6 trainers that worked with him at the gym at the time. I was not one of them. And I approached him and I said, hey man, like, you have this gym and, you've already kind of fostered this environment of like exclusivity, and you've kind of already branded yourself in this way. I was like, we should think about doing some stuff online. I think there's really good potential for building a brand online. And at the time I was thinking like YouTube vlog style. This
was 2016.
Yeah. I was thinking like YouTube kind of vlog style, almost like, again, the way that those guys were doing it at the time. And we had actually met with a big group of us, probably 12 to 15 of us. And we all, the original idea is that we had a bunch of people there that kind of specialize in various sports. So one guy there was like a soccer player. We had a baseball player. We had a guy who played football. We had a guy who did weightlifting. We had a guy that did bobsled. So the idea was that we would build this online brand, and we would use all the individual identities to kind of start catering to these individual like sports, essentially. And by the end of the meeting, the only guys left were basically like myself and Derek, Mr. Infinity, and then Ben. So myself and Derek were actually the only two at the time that believed that we could actually start developing a brand and like a training business online. The other guys just didn't believe we could do it.
Gotcha.
And so Ben basically, in a nutshell, gave them the ultimatum. He was sold, Ben was sold on it. And so Ben essentially gave them the ultimatum, like, hey, you guys can be a part of this or get out of my gym, essentially. And like I said, the only guys left standing were myself and Derek, and that's when we started getting to work and we started building the online. So that's kind of how we started that. And then I quit where I was, and then basically just brought my personal training business over, and I did that in the meantime while we actually built up the business and started.
What was the model? What was that model look like? Because did you have like ownership in it? Were you an employee? What did that look like?
No, so I was essentially just a contractor with a percentage of the net business. So the contract was essentially sweat equity initially. would be a percentage of the business for my contributions towards whatever the brand was or was becoming. Because at the time we didn't really know, right? We just kind of, the way we started it was we did individual programs, and we kind of just classified it or umbrellaed it like under ATG, because we knew we would pick up different markets.
Got it.
Yeah. And so initially we had like our own individual programs, and then at one point we just decided there's no point in doing that. We might as well just kind of combine our strengths and just essentially start developing one specific system, which is essentially the result of what it is now. It's just become a system.
And so I want to give some context too, just because that's a great backstory. And then like I came in maybe 2 years after when things started to pick up a little bit. Ben was starting to grow online. You were starting to grow online. Everybody was. And it's interesting too, because Presley, our clip cutter, is now cutting for Derek too, which is just like by happenstance. Somehow he got connected to
And this is interesting because I've always followed the fitness space to a degree, but I had no exposure to any of this, your guys' space at all, until I met Logan.
Okay.
Anything. Didn't know any of it.
He just came from like, old school bodybuilder bro.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Arnold and Franco.
Yeah, Arnold and Franco.
Back when times were much simpler.
But so one thing that, and the whole ATG thing, you guys split up, whatever. I don't want to get into it really that much. It's just like a weird situation altogether.
Yeah.
Obviously you and I are super tight, and I have tons of respect for Ben, and he helped me so much, and with his family and all that kind of stuff.
Well, Logan, I have a question for you. Why did you leave?
Well, so I left because it just was like, at this time am, so I'm doing that in personal training, and I, closed my first like Facebook ads client, and I'm writing some emails for some people, and I just felt like
didn't you actually like didn't you say that you wanted to try to run Facebook ads and stuff for them, and then they just kind of weren't really bought into it, right?
That's what it was. I guess wanted to do things their way.
Yeah, whatever. It's fine.
And granted, I was, I had a lot of ambition and was very curious and like things like, but I didn't have a ton of experience. Yeah. So I wrote up a big pitch, and it just like kind of got tabled, whatever. Yeah. But so I just left because, I was training and I'm working on this online stuff, and then this time I'm in, the money Twitter space and just like reading all this shit.
You're lurking.
Yeah, and I'm buying stuff, and I close a couple clients, to write emails. Like one of the smoke shops here in Clearwater, like closed him on a deal.
Oh, okay.
A couple other people, whatever. And I just like felt like there wasn't really room for me to make the money that I wanted to doing that. And at this point, I wanted to make money. That was my sole prerogative as a 20-year-old dropout. And so and then I got connected with Jared, and that opportunity kind of just flourished, and I just took it and left. But I want to give some context too, because I want to one thing that we have, which obviously I own a fitness company, right? And you're our first guest, I think, that is like, Soul Bra, obviously.
Yeah, so he's good. He's got good stuff.
Maybe our second guest in like the fitness space, but it's big in my life. It's big in Nick's life.
Yeah.
And I want to talk deeply about the training stuff, but I want to give context to it, because I think one piece that you missed out, and when I think of you, like obviously you're a super strong dude. Right. You used to play baseball, but you left out like the Christopher Sommers stuff and the gymnastics.
Yeah.
And I think that, like when I think of the flexible, I think of, you're my size, my strength. What are you, like 6'2", 210, 220, somewhere in that ballpark?
A little shorter and a little heavier, yeah.
Okay.
Like 6 foot, 6'1". Like right now it's sitting about 220.
220. Okay, but when I met you, you were.
No, I was actually. Yeah, when I met you, I was probably a lot leaner. I was probably not even. I wouldn't say leaner. I would say I was just smaller. So I probably weighed 210. Yeah, you're probably right.
Okay, but you were 210, and the thing that, like, because I remember meeting you.
I think that's small, but
when I met you. You were like this at first, like this very like intimidating person, and then I find out like a week or two later, after I was just working out at the gym at this point. I didn't even work there yet, and someone's like, "Yeah, he can put his nose on his toes," and I'm like, "Bro, he's huge. What?" Like, and so those
were the days.
The flexible. So I would love for you to talk about like the.
Yeah, that's
Can you
actually
still do that, by the way.
I could, like, if you gave me like a week's time, I could probably get it back.
So you couldn't do it on the pod
I couldn't
right
do it like right now.
You still have like your front split?
Ish. Not really. So we'll probably talk about that. Like I would say like probably 95% of it. It wouldn't be a clean full down, but if for any other normal person, they'd be like, holy crap, like that's really impressive. But yeah, it's actually funny because my name, ironically, actually came from Ben and Derek. So they're the ones that kind of named me, because it was me, Ben, and Derek, the three of us, who just sat down at lunch one day and we had a meeting right before, and we were like, what are we going to call each other, right? Like, we need to have like superhero type of monikers. Like, we were totally playing into this marketing idea on social media, and it was like, we kind of needed names that would just stand out, because like Ben Patrick and Derek, it's like, it just wasn't enough, right? And so, you know, Ben already knew. He already knew who he was going to be, because he felt his mission, and I think he's done, you know, to be totally fair, I think he's done very well at getting out there, is getting people to train their knees over their toes. Now, that's not something that I was ever told not to do. Like, I'm pretty, because my first real introduction into fitness was like, on a commercial scale, was CrossFit, and you did Olympic weightlifting, so there was no such thing as not going over your toes. But a lot of people in the commercial space have been told that, and to this day are still told not to.
I certainly was.
Yeah.
You know, back in like high school.
I was.
And back in like, because I kind of got into like the bodybuilding scene like a little bit.
Right.
And there's a lot of like bodybuilders at the gym. They're all on steroids or whatever.
Yeah.
No, don't put your knees over your toes.
Yeah,
I just remember that when learned how to squat properly.
Yeah, and that's his message.
How to squat improperly.
How to squat properly based on what they were saying.
Of course. And that was kind of what his initial introduction to training was, that similar advice, right? And so I have just a different, like, I just don't have that. I was never told that. So I'm more fortunate in the sense that I was just never really given that kind of information that I had to like work my way out of over time. But he certainly was, and he felt like his mission or his goal was to get people to understand that not only is it okay, it's probably beneficial that you do so, right? And I think he's done a good job, obviously, like
he's got
getting that message across. Like 1.6 now or something crazy. So which is great. You know, it's good. And then Mr. Infinity was given his name by somebody else because he was all kind of like into holistic health, and you know, at the time he was like in his 40s, and he looked, I mean, he still does. Super young, you know, he looks great. And so his whole moniker was like Mr. Infinity, like live forever and youth, you know, infinite youthfulness.
Gotcha.
And so then mine was, I had this capacity and this good understanding of flexibility, but I was also big and strong, which I think you see more of now. It's still not something you see a lot of, but there's very few people that are actually very big or strong and athletic and display a high level of flexibility. Like, a lot of times when you hear flexibility, you're going to think like, you know, no offense, but like man bun, yoga type guy wearing the sandals and like all the like esoteric tattoos, you know what I mean? Yeah. And like, and for sure they're very good at what they do, but it's very rare to actually see someone who can display both well and actually like competently understand how to develop both at the same time, right? And there was sort of like this, you know, idea that you can't ever really be both. Like, if you're going to be big and strong, you're going to have to just sacrifice range of motion and mobility and all this stuff. And so that's just how we came up with the names, was as I was given it.
And you got into that though, training after you like left the CrossFit space. You started working with Samer, right? Yeah, so obviously introduced to CrossFit. My first real introduction, like probably most people in this country, was like Kelly Starrett, which at the time did Mobility WOD, and he wrote a book called Supple Leopard. And so he was kind of like, he commercialized mobility basically, and like making it okay to train mobility and talk about how successful it was or how good it is. And, you know, whether I agree or disagree with some of his stuff, he definitely commercialized the importance of mobility. And then it was funny, I was listening to, Coach Summers was a U.S. junior national men's team coach. And he had started writing this book called Building the Gymnastic Body, which eventually he converted into like a forum and started selling online programs. But he went on a podcast at the time that was called Barbell Shrugged, which at the time was like a CrossFit podcast. I think now it's more of like a generalized fitness podcast. But then it was definitely a CrossFit podcast. And the reason it was so memorable is because he literally goes on a CrossFit podcast and starts talking shit about how CrossFitters like shouldn't be doing a lot of the Olympic lifts because they just don't have the adequate mobility to be doing so. And he was just talking shit about how like CrossFit's version of gymnastics was just like this massively bastardized like understanding.
Everyone makes fun of CrossFit. Not everyone, but like it's a huge kind of like meme to a degree.
For sure. I think it's memed, but at the same time, like I think you just have to give credit where credit's due and understand that like the popularity of fitness, I think as a whole, I think the first big one was obviously like Arnold in the 80s in bodybuilding. And I think that the big push in the past decade, you know, at least since like, you know, CrossFit's golden era was probably like mid to late 2000s, like 2008 is when I got into it. And at the time, it was not as commercial as it is now. It was mostly like the boxes were mostly ran by like military personnel, or like they were very much in that world, almost in that like tactical world. Mm-hmm. And then they just kind of branched out even more. And it was just, I liked that personality. I liked the fact that he just had the balls to go on a CrossFit podcast and be like, you guys are just going about this the wrong way. And because of baseball, I had a lot of, asymmetries and imbalances, at least like hyperinflated asymmetries. Like I get into this, we're all asymmetrical, but when you play a rotational sport and that's all I really played. I was just like a one-dimensional athlete. I just played baseball. I didn't play much else. So for like 15 years, all I did was like rotate to the left. So it showed up in
I played for years as well, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
So the second you go to touch a barbell, you're screwed, because like the way you create force is by like rotating to the left. So every time I went to go do something with like a fixed bar or something, like those asymmetries were glaring. And so I went down the mobility rabbit hole initially with the Kelly Starrett stuff, and it just didn't stick for me. It didn't work for me. And then that's when I got more into the gymnastics stuff and really actually got into like what I would call legitimate like stretching and stuff like that. So that's how that,
Yeah, it's super, because when I came to, ATG, I had like my last year, or my final season in college, like I had debilitating patellar tendonitis, right? And I played quarterback my whole life, so again, just planting off my right leg the whole time and building that sort of rotational strength. And then I got super barbell strong in high school, college, whatever, and I think it definitely led into a lot of the stuff that I do now is like kind of alleviating that and building things what I would deem kind of the right way. And I want to keep talking about that, because for you probably, I would say, are maybe one of, if not my high school strength coach was a huge influence, but like my methodology and the way I approach these things, I would say you're probably my biggest influence in putting it all together. Like one of the fitness minds I respect the most with all those things. So I would love to hear your kind of like, how do you think about strength and mobility and all those different things? Like, what's your philosophy? What's your methodology if you had to summarize? I know it's like...
How much time do we have? No. The way I kind of operate now is I don't know, some people will have heard it listening to this. If not, I'm sure they'll go try to check it out afterwards. But one of the models... So, to be clear, like over the past decade, I've probably had my hands in damn near every fitness certification model system that you can possibly think of, right? Mm-hmm. So anyone watching this or listening to this, if you can think of like a fitness system that you could go get certified in or whatever, I've done it. I've been through it. And over the past decade, I found bits and pieces that have worked, but nothing really ever gave me the full picture. Like I really don't believe that I've really started piecing things together well until the past probably few years, ironically enough. And I follow now what Bill Hartman, he basically popularized this model. It's called the expansion compression model. And basically what it does is it classifies and simplifies all movement down into basically two categories. So if you can think of basically any plane of motion or like movement that you would assign to what different body parts can do, he basically classified it down into what's called expansion and what's called compression. And it just simplifies the whole movement spectrum. And so that's the model that I kind of use now viewing movement. And it's a hard thing to really explain fully here, but essentially if you think of things like internal rotation and external rotation or adduction or abduction or pronation or supination, you basically start to see that there's just like a duality in all of our movement, right? And then like the funny thing is, like one of the words that the strength conditioning industry will throw around a lot is neutral. Like it needs to be neutral this, neutral that. But I don't think you can really have a firm understanding of neutral unless you really like
go to the extremes
of either side of movement. And so it's the best model that I've seen to date, and what it's done for me is it's basically allowed me to go back into all the systems that I've been part of the past 10 years, and it has highlighted all the things that felt right about those systems while removing what I didn't feel was useful. And I've realized over the years that there's probably a lot more fitness systems basically fitness in a nutshell converges in a lot of places, and I think that's where you're going to find the most truth in fitness and training. But everyone on the internet is arguing about the slight differences that separate them, right?
I think and
that's not just
fitness.
It's
literally in everything.
It's literally just it's a paradox of, I think, our existence.
It's also how people communicate too.
Yeah, communication, politics, religion.
Like saying the same thing, but it comes out a little bit different.
Exactly. And so everyone's arguing over semantics, and it's funny because there's a small group of people that sort of subscribe to this model. And I know just from talking, we're all kind of sitting on the outside laughing because we're watching all these people argue and bicker over stuff. And we're like, it's funny because we're like, you guys are talking about the same thing. You're just using a different language, and you're arguing over about it to each other. And it's just really it's a really weird space.
I can relate it to our marketing space really well, because you see all the little people they have their thing and they all argue amongst each other, and we're just kind of sitting back watching, building a real business.
Yeah.
It's we got to figure it out, and it's
that's what
you're arguing over nothing.
Well, I think that especially too, being in both industries, kind of like the internet marketing world and fitness, these people have to draw these lines in the sand because their view of the model isn't good enough to be a really, really great product in and of itself, or service or whatever, the methodology. And so they have to draw these lines in the sand and create the arguments so to make the product or service seem better so that they can sell it, right? And it's really interesting seeing kind of the corollary.
Yeah. Well, it's models are there to test, right? The whole purpose of a model to exist is to test things against. So it's as long as the model gets better and the things that you test, the odds are continually pushing more and more in your favor, the better and more accurate it probably is. It's never going to be perfect. You're never going to be 100%. But I think if you can get just the scale to move more and more and more in your favor, over time, you only help 5 out of 10 clients that walk into your gym. And then it's 6 out of 10, and then it's 7 out of 10, and then it's 8 out of 10. It's probably never going to be 10 out of 10, but I think you can get pretty close if you're following the right model. And the way you're going to know it's the right model is if you constantly test against it, and it constantly, in a way, does acknowledge the biases that you have and give you confirmation bias that what you're doing is working. Or you say, okay, this didn't work, but that's a whole nother rabbit hole. So that's the purpose of a model. It's not a black or white thing. It's not a checklist that you're just this one little thing, it doesn't work, throw it out the window.
Every time I have a discussion about fitness or marketing or whatever, and we kind of cross over a little bit, I just realize that everything is literally the exact same. Anything you try, golf, right? I had golfed in high school a little bit. I played a bunch of tournaments and stuff. Different coaches would tell you different things. It's all about this model or this swing method. Or da-da-da. It's the same exact thing as fitness, as marketing, as literally everything. It's the same concept. Yeah. So question I have for you is, what drives you to find, because obviously you're very maybe obsessed, passionate,
I would definitely say I'm obsessed, absolutely.
Why are you obsessed with fitness, and why have you made this your choice? Why'd you pick this?
I just think that, one, it's something that is a very, it's very accessible. I mean, we all have a body, right? And we all have to operate in a body. And just what I found is that most people are so limited by what they can do physically that, for me, that's one of the, again, there's a duality to it, so I think it can go either way. It's like the chicken or the egg, but I think so many people are so hyper-focused on the things that affect them physically, it really limits their ability to do much of anything else very well, whether they're aware of it or not. It's when you're so constantly focused on this hurts or this, or oh, I'm too over, it's such a limiting scope that I think that I just enjoy it. I don't know. I like movement. I like sports. I like athletics. Athletics didn't pan out for me. I wanted to find a way to still somehow stay within the realm in some capacity and stay attached to it. And I wanted to maybe help and give people, reduce the learning curve for other people that are going to take that same step or journey and potentially allow them to actually do the things that they want to do. I really feel like if I had better access to certain kind of training when I was in high school or even middle school, if I started young enough, I would have been better off. And I think most people would be. Gotcha. I do.
I definitely feel that way. If I had me now talking to me when I was 15, I would have been so much better off in my athletic pursuits and things like that. And it's a really interesting idea that the body can be a limiting thing, because I think that especially now especially, you know, there's all the memes, right? Like, if you lift weights, you may be liable to becoming a far right extremist, right? And it's just like the body in and of itself is really kind of everything. And you can get into all the, you know, sort of micro aspects of it with nutrition and training and things like that. But it just like, it carries over into everything. It carries over into how you view the world. And it's a really interesting place where you can just every model is going to be built off of that model. I mean, you quite literally kind of become, in my opinion, the personification of like your hormonal profile, right? And so what you're putting in your body, what you're doing with your body, and so many people just leave like miles of potential. And like once you taste what feeling great can feel like, you kind of become limitless in a way. It opens up everything.
There's a couple ways that I see this, and this is going to be interesting because I don't really get into these kind of conversations too often because they can kind of get a little out there in a way. But I think one of the things that's important to understand, and I think one of the excuses that I see thrown around a lot in fitness is genetics, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously we all have this like genetic predisposition with certain things. Like there's certain things you're not gonna be able to control, right? Like height, stuff like this, right? Mm-hmm. But with that being said, I think people often use it as an excuse to just write things off. And what I will say, not to say that I'm special, because I'm not even just saying the way I've observed things for myself or like my kids, for instance, because I have 2 boys. But if I look at a couple, and I think a lot of people will actually, when they hear this, they'll go, oh yeah, I've definitely observed that, right? When I look at a couple and I see how unfit and out of shape they are and just their general health, and I look at their kids often reflect exactly where those people were at the stage in life when that kid was born, right? So they like what I will see is people, just in general, I think you will see that a lot. When I look at a very fit couple, or at least a couple that, you know, maybe is just in better health or better shape or whatever, and you look at their kids, their kids are also display generally those same exact qualities. Like you're not going to see this soft, generally pudgy kid of I think you are writing your genetic code right now. With the things you eat, 100%. The training that you're doing, and maybe you do have worse genetics than other people, but you still have the ability to make that better and pass that down.
I think one of the perfect things is the jaw structure. And there was this post on Twitter I saw the other day of Indians, maybe like 100, or like actual like people from the country India, not like Native American Indians, right? And their jaw structure were like
not misclassified Indians.
Their jaw structure were like it's supposed to be genetically, but then over the last like 100 years, the modern diet has just like absolutely ruined like jaw structure because no one's chewing how they should be, and tongues are in the wrong position and whatever, people are breathing wrong, etc. I think it's just a perfect example.
The lack of like generalized health in that country, there's a lot of illness and stuff that you're going to see, and you know.
But I think in general, it's a perfect example of, all right, we're predisposed to a certain thing, but your environment of like the food isn't right, and you're just eating mush all day. Like your jaw is not going to 100% be correct, and probably goes for the rest of your body.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, I know I've read other books where they've kind of used those examples for like, if you look at the Mongolians versus like the Chinese army, it was like, how were the Mongolians able to like how did they destroy this like massive Chinese army? It's like, well, at that time they had already had rice. You know, their diet was primarily rice, so they were already like
carved up,
genetically shorter, and whereas the Mongolians were still like eating yak's meat.
They were
eating
the Yamnaya steppe diet,
and these guys were basically just like
raw meat,
these
dairy,
giant, massive men who just were like absolute savage warriors, and it's like there's no question about it. Yeah, exactly.
I like to post about that occasionally on the story. I eat a Mongol diet. It's like 2 pounds of ribeye, some raw liver, some Van Leeuwen ice cream.
Yeah. So I definitely think there's something to that, but it's like, I think these people have just given up, and it's like they don't understand. Like, I think the best service that I can do while I'm here on this earth is to make it better, and the way how I'm going to do that is to sort of strengthen my line and make it better. And there are just certain things that I was born that I was not good at, you know, and are predisposed to, but it's like I've got to make the best of what I have, and I think the only thing I'm going to do is if I do that is make mine better.
It's super interesting for me because I don't know if you even know this, but when I was like 15, I had Graves' disease, right, which is autoimmune hyperthyroidism. And like basically as the things that I work with my clients now, and I don't really do like one-on-one stuff. It's really just like I want people to come in and actually learn, you know what I mean, and understand concepts, because all the people that have trained one-on-one, I can lay it all up for them, but like if they actually internalize it, it works. Yeah. And if they don't internalize it, then it doesn't fucking work, right? Yeah. But so like all the problems that I've kind of solved for myself, and that's how I got even into it, is like, number one, had this autoimmune issue, and now I don't take anything for it. Yeah. And it's basically just, you remove all the modern stressors that, you know, they load into the junk food that's everywhere in the economy, not country of America. And then, you know, like I have these, you know, I want to look better, feel better, so I get into lifting weights, and then it's like, as I get stronger in doing that, now I'm like, my knee hurts, my hip hurts, my back hurts. It's like, now I need to understand, you know, building strength through length, and, you know, building an expansive or compressive, or probably most people are super compressed.
Most
right?
people would be compressed.
And so start building on like an expansive model.
Even if you think of like,
or rotational model.
And again, this is a little bit of a reach, and this is not medical advice, but I have heard within this model the observation, if you think of like disorders like anxiety disorders, depressive disorders, something that's skyrocketing right now, if you look at it through a lens of it, like this lens, that is compression. Yeah. It's the person retreating back into themselves versus the ability to actually go outward and expand outward into their environment and their society and their, you know, their community and things like that, right? Like essentially that's what those disorders are, in a sense, if you can look at it that way.
And even then you can think too, building on that, like, you know, the breathing is such a huge thing that's super compressive, or even, you know, people's diets or their hormonal profiles with, you know, they're touching microplastics 100 million times a day. And it's just like, everything in the human body is malleable, and your body is your mind. Yeah. Basically, that's kind of how I like to.
It's certainly a reflection. I mean, I think like something you guys may have like if I look into like the entrepreneurial world, it seems like a lot of people transition better from fitness into almost any other market, and I think it's just because a lot of it's I don't want to say it's the only market, but it's really, it's not, you can't really buy fitness, right? You are a total sum of your habits and the things that you do on a daily basis, and you are going to be a direct reflection of that in the fitness world physically. Like, yeah, for sure, you can go out and buy implants and do all these different things, but it's like, it's recognizable. You know, people can see what that is, but it's like, I just think the habits that it builds in general just reflect out into many other aspects.
100%. You know? That's why I credit a lot of why I got started with business and entrepreneurship to fitness, because it teaches the exact structure of like discipline and actually like showing up every single day. Because like building your muscles, you don't really see results for like 3 to 6 months, right? Same thing in business. Like it takes time, and that same mental model, it just crosses over.
Yeah, even like personal training, the market that I try to tell people to get into if they can is like middle-aged men who are entrepreneurs or successful business owners. Because not only are they going to have the money to train, they're going to understand what it actually, like how to, like that it's not like this short-term gain. Like all my best clients are rich, successful businessmen. And it's because they came in and they understand, no, this isn't like you're going to buy 12 sessions from me. It's like, I need a year of your time. If you really want to make, like, start working really towards the direction of like being in your best health, give me a year of your time. And they understand it. They go, okay, yeah, perfectly acceptable.
What do you say to people that are like, oh, I just don't have time for this?
I just think they're full of shit, man. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have time for this.
I'm so with you. The entrepreneur thing is hilarious, because I know, like, once I left you guys and there's two things I want to say. Number one, I really felt that viscerally as soon as I left there, because it was the first time in my life that basically my life wasn't predicated on my body. As soon as I went to go do some e-com shit, whatever, you know, either via personal training or college sports or high school sports, and then younger than that, you don't have any responsibility anyway. But like that was the first time in my life that my life wasn't predicated on my body and what I was doing with my training, and I was working hard, right? And I was prioritizing that, and I let it slip for a while, like not like crazy long, or didn't get crazy out of shape, but just like
you let it slip.
Yeah, I did let it slip, and just like I could feel like my mind deteriorating and just feeling worse about myself, and almost was unable to go do the business stuff that I wanted
year after I dropped out, where I was
had a high level
at that sales job, I would work out maybe twice a week, and I could relate.
But you made a good point earlier, though, because what you said earlier is this, because a lot of people might maybe not watching this, because a lot of people watching this probably are in this space already. But one of the things I will see is, I don't work out or I don't lift and I feel fine. It's like you don't actually have the awareness.
You don't know how good you could feel.
Exactly. And so you have no relative comparison.
Mm-hmm. It's
right? So it's like most people, if you ask them honestly, they walk around all day and they just feel like absolute
So if
dog
we went
shit.
and ate McDonald's right now, we'd feel awful.
Yeah.
Right? But the person that eats McDonald's or fast
All the
food
time.
every day, it's just like, oh, I'm all right. Like, I'm fine.
I'm always inflamed.
Like, and they don't know the difference.
I feel puffy today because I slept for like 2 hours last night because of being an idiot and we had to drive.
We just have
all the
this
way
awareness.
Here.
We have this awareness
I
of it.
viscerally feel it. I'm like, oh, tonight when I get back, I'm going to go eat a really healthy meal and instantly slump at the hotel before our event tomorrow and just like.
But the person that does that bad habit every single day is just constantly just in a bad state of mind, and they feel like shit, whatever. So they're like, oh, this is normal. I feel great. And they don't know how good it could be.
Yeah, and the thing is like, I think so many people are focused. You know, social media is interesting because no matter how hard you try, you're in a bubble, right? And like, the people that you need to get to the most probably actually aren't watching your social media, which is one of the things that I've, very rarely. But because it's like they're
watching it. They're on TikTok hating on it.
Yeah. But general health in this country and across the world is not getting better. Like you would think with the explosion of commercialized fitness and stuff, like the metrics would at least be slowing down, but we're
I think it's going to the extremes.
Well, I think the metric now is by 2030, 50% of the American male population will be obese. Wow, 50%.
That's crazy.
You're talking half the American male population will be obese at this in 2030. That's only 8 years. So it's like we're not making a massive dent.
What percent of the population is actually
would have never happened when people smoked darts.
What percent of the population is actually using this fitness knowledge that's out here on the internet?
It's very small.
The people that already are kind of doing it,
which is crazy
10 to 15%.
Like, it pays for his life. Now I'm doing more marketing stuff, but it paid for my life for a long time.
Yeah.
And, it's crazy.
Yeah, but it's such a small niche that's paying for my life. This is not like a massive.
So why do you think this is happening? Why do you think 50% plus of the American population, male population, is going to be overweight? Because I have a lot of theories on this.
That sounds nefarious.
Other than just like the overall propaganda of this whole like body image thing that we've seen with accepting, you know what I mean? Well, like, I don't know. I mean, this is a huge.
I think there's that, but you look at pictures 50 to 100 years ago, everyone's skinny.
I think food. One of the things I actually heard recently, which is a really good argument. I think food just fucking tastes good now. Like 50 years ago, food probably just didn't taste that good, and now just like there's so much. There's been such an advancement, I think, in the art of cooking and food and accessibility. Obviously, like accessibility is a big one. I think
it's the corporations pushing big soy.
I mean, yeah. I didn't know if we were actually going to go there, but
we're going there. Yeah, of course.
There's obviously like, in my opinion, do I think there's interest in keeping people sick?
Well,
for sure, I do.
I've seen it firsthand with my grandparents, right? Because they ate, what the corporations put out there, right? And my grandma just passed away.
And said this was good for you. And
yeah, my grandma just
passed away. If you go into the whole like invention of baby formula and the whole the whole propaganda.
Baby formula is basically like soy.
Yeah,
and
that's
just
all
like
it is.
High fructose corn syrup and whatever. Yeah. But my grandma passed away recently.
All the essentials.
I saw this happen, firsthand, because as she decided, hey, it's time. Like she's on 20 different pills, whatever, and really. The way I see it is these big corporations, they put all this shit in the foods, right? People consume it, makes them sick, diabetes, whatever. Oh, take a pill, you're fine. Then big pharma comes in, gives them the pill. Oh, with this pill, you take it, and it creates 4 different, problems, right? Oh, and then you take another pill for those side effects, and then those pills extend your life, but then they create more problems. So you get on another pill, and you keep eating the shit food from the other corporations, and then you get into this cycle where you're just another pill, and you're basically a pay pig for big pharma at a certain point. And to me, that's how I look at it.
No, I mean, for sure.
The craziest example I think is like statins. That's a crazy one to look like. Just look at the data of who it actually helps. It's like the number's not that high of people that it actually helps, in my opinion, from what I've seen.
Here's the truth of it. It's something I've recently kind of had this realization of, even just in fitness. And again, I think you're going to see parallels no matter what market is. And you guys will probably, as soon as I say this, you probably go, oh yeah, I know some guys like that. I think that there's actually very few people who truly understand their market and what their role is and what their job is and how to do it well. And I think what a lot of people do when they realize that they cannot get a product, they start to sell a philosophy. And I think you'll often see people that sell a philosophy that doesn't actually get a product, so they just package the philosophy and sell that, and they get other people to buy into the philosophy, and it's like, okay, but wait a second, what product are you actually getting from this other than just a following of
theories
people that
and
goes,
mindset?
yeah, I totally believe what you're saying, and I think this is great, and it's like, but show me out here in the real world what this is actually making you, right? And I see it in sales all the time. It's like, and part of it is probably a fault of the person.
Give us an example of like what a philosophy would be and then what a product would be?
Like, for instance, what I have seen is trainers who have gone into this, like, almost like this business, like training business market, or like I feel like everywhere I look now, every trainer is like selling how to like grow a fitness business, right? And I always see. I think what I'm trying to say is I just see them sell this philosophy or this idea, but I don't see an extensive amount of people saying, yeah, this actually worked for me. And like, I think you see outliers of stories, and I think a lot of people capitalize and double down on that. If I had to think of like I think a lot of people in general, I think even just the entire educational system, period, at the university level for the most part, you sell people a philosophy. You don't actually sell people production. You don't teach people how to go out in society and take this and actually learn valuable skills that they can actually go produce a valuable product in society in which they can make a good, stable income.
It's all theories.
It's all theoretical. Yeah, it's
Gender
all theoretical
studies.
Information. It's all this hypothetical shit that's just sitting up here in the air, and they're basically just capitalizing on us sitting around thinking about stuff, and instead of actually just like going out and
like creating something.
100%.
It's kind of I can relate that to industry. You know, from where I grew up, all the industry left, the big factories left, and then what are we left with? Like some little white collar like jobs or whatever, and there's no real industry holding the city together other than we're gonna ship our Amazon packages here, you know, we're gonna order from Amazon. It's all consumers. Recently like a chip plant came back, so I'm like kind of like that'll be dope, but like no one's creating anything anymore, especially in America at large. It's all moved overseas.
It's primarily a consumer market. Yeah.
Which, I mean, there's a lot of interlays into why that's happening too. It's
we can go way.
That's a rabbit hole.
We'll go way off subject with that one.
I love, one of the most interesting things to me, and I consistently see it, right, is, people will like meet me for the first time or something, like if they don't know me, right, or they just see one thing, right, they'll see me throw up I just posted a shirtless picture, right, just like after a lift, whatever. And all the guys who internalize the fitness stuff, like you're a philosopher, Jeff. No. At the end of the day, like seriously, like the people who go into like the people who master physicality, it's kind of like a Nietzschean thought in a way. The people who master physicality like end up being the bros, and you saw it during the 2020 bullshit. Like the guys who are taking care of their health, they end up learning all these other like academic pursuits and actually understanding mental models and being smart people way more of the time. But then are perceived as, I don't know, whatever you want to call them, jocks or bros or like people associate that with stupidity. But time and time again, you just see that they end up being the smartest people.
Right-wing bodybuilders.
What I've seen, and I think that it's part of what that, like, they pursue that product, and they understand that, like, product versus philosophy.
I mean, but even look at, like, the golden era bodybuilders. Look at how many of them carried on and actually had very successful careers in a lot of other things once bodybuilding was done and over with.
Yeah.
Like, they capitalized
almost all of them.
Supplement companies, clothing line, like, movies, like, they capitalized on that big time. Like, I think it's something you see a lot in this industry, especially people that are very successful in it, is they do have the capacity to go out and, because I think the body is still such a, it's very complex.
I don't trust people that don't lift to a degree or don't care, at least like have a mindset of, I need to start like prioritizing my health to a degree, even if they haven't really consistently before. If they're not thinking about it to a degree of like, I'm going to go at least run or I'm going to do something like that, I don't really trust them.
Look, I think training in a nutshell is just, it's an adaptive process to stress, right? And if you just look at society, people are not good at managing stress. They're just not. Because, like,
pop another pill.
Just look at them. Just go, I don't have to say much more than that. Just go out to society. Most people have a really poor, have really poor stress management, period. And I think, like, when you do something like literally apply a huge level of stress to your body and your mind consistently, just the same way we're sitting here now, you're going to adapt to that over time, and you're going to become more and more, like, less susceptible to things like stress, because you're so good at managing it and understanding the process of managing it and learning how, if I apply X amount of stress and I recover from it, you just get better and better and better and better at it. And I think that's all I see training as, really, is just like an adaptation to stress. I mean, it's our whole evolutionary process of how we went from this little single cell organism into the ocean to where we are now has just been millions of years of an adaptation to a specific stress that we said, fuck this, I'm not succumbing to this, I want to stay here and I want to continue figuring this thing out, and here we are. Like, it's
basically life. It's there's not really that much to life. There's like how you're going to make money, how you're going to take care of your health, what relationships are you going to cultivate.
How are you going to survive?
And that's all just stress management at the end of the day.
100%.
I want to kind of segue, because we could, especially you and I could sit here and, I think Nick maybe has less exposure to hours.
I have less exposure to, like, the autistic, like, the inner workings of everything. But I'll throw my take in there whenever.
No, and I love it. But I want to, but I do want to ask you something, and it's, I saw your second son. That was the first time I've ever seen him, since I left. And we're talking about stress and all this stuff. I want to ask, and just kind of a different angle. We've been talking about, like, been recurring theme, like all the guys we meet that, do train and do go build a business and take ownership over all these areas of life. And they're all younger. We're about to be 24, right? We're young. But all of these guys are younger and they want to start a family and have that. So I would love to hear kind of your take on, now with two boys, how has that, like, changed your outlook, like being a father?
I'll never be the same person I was. It's interesting. Like, you almost have, like, this amnesia to what life was like before. Like, when I went out with you guys, like, a month ago, I was like, holy shit, dude, I almost forgot this existed. Like, I was just like, it was such a weird space for me to be.
How old are you?
32. So I'm not even that old. You know what I mean? Because I'm sure where we went, like, there were plenty of other guys my age out there. But I was like, you just...
I feel he's mostly like college age.
Yeah, for sure. But I was just so... And it had nothing to do with me being a father or anything like that. Like, even if I didn't have kids, I just think, like, when you're running a business and you just have a different purpose in life, and that just ain't it for me at that time. So it was just a different perspective, because it was not only, I only say that because, like I said, to tie in with the amnesia, I just forgot that life existed, because, like, the only like recollection of memory that I really have is, like, when my first son was born at this point. Like, it's like a weird transition, and I think part of it is just like a survival mechanism that we have, because it's like that now becomes your sole purpose, and if it's not contributing to them going forward, then what the fuck are you doing? Right? So I by no means am the perfect father. I do the best I can, just like anybody else, but I think that I'm in a good place. I own my own business. I don't really answer to anybody. You know what I mean? I've definitely taken, and that's just my personality. It's just not a position I like to see myself in, answering to somebody else. But, it definitely drives me, right? Because, like, it's an interesting situation, because I really became an entrepreneur and started my own business as a father. So I already had kids. It's risky.
Yeah.
It's fucking risky, dude, because it's like, there's no short-term security in the sense, like, if I do go get, like, a 9 to 5, at least there's some short-term security. There's no long-term security. I don't ever believe in that. But there's no short-term security. It's like, if I don't make money pop a fucking appear the next month, how am I going to feed my kids? How am I going to pay my bills? Whatever. At least if you just go get a salary job, something's coming.
We just talked about it earlier today on the previous pod with Andre, and that was, like, responsibility.
Yeah.
That's the first time when people have kids. That's typically, like, the first time that they have some sort of real responsibility.
So. Not everybody, but you would hope so.
Yeah, but some sort of real responsibility.
I think a sane individual will step it up and take on a much greater level of responsibility, for sure. And, because I think for me, I just want them to have opportunities that either I wanted or I just never had, right? And so it's like, if I can provide that for them, and you know, like my kids, they go to private school, one's homeschooled, they basically, I don't want to say they get everything they want in the sense of like they get everything what they want, but the opportunity is there if they earn it, right? So like, if my son wants to go to Disney for his birthday or whatever, cool. He has to earn it. He has to.
You got an overhead squat, 205,
exactly.
Buster.
Double body weight squat, or we're not going to Disney. No, but it's, you know, I am in a position to provide them that, and I want them to understand that, like, I think a lot of people in life think that they can't have certain things or they're not capable of certain things. And I certainly at one point in my life have thought that, and of course I'm sure it creeps up on all of us. Sometimes it actually inhibits us for reaching for certain things. Like, should I really do that? Because subconsciously somewhere along the line you were told you don't deserve it, or, you know, whatever crazy ideas people get. And I want them to understand that like the world is literally your oyster, and you can literally go out and get whatever you want if you, and I think it's basic things, and I think this is probably where you guys will start to agree. As long as you work hard, as long as you're consistent, as long as you're a decent human being, and when you're presented with tough situations, you try to always do the right thing based on the information that you have. Always try to expand the information that you do have, because it's the only way to learn new things and gain new perspective, right? So as long as I can instill those things in them, then I think I've done a fairly good job. While also, you know, my dad, you know, as much as I love him, he felt his only responsibilities were clothes on your back, roof over your head, food in your mouth. Mm-hmm. And it did not exceed those three things. Mm-hmm. And for sure, it kept me alive, but I think it left a lot missing for me personally as a young man, things that I felt like I needed in my life. And that created problems with me in my younger years, which I overcame. And now I've stepped out of that fucking feeling sorry for myself and whatever. And I said, you know what? No, fuck this. I got to go out into the world, and I got to make it my own. And you know, I've tried to do that, and I'm going to continue to try to do that the best way I can. And I think that's, for them, it's changed my life. I mean, there's no two ways about it. When you have kids, it's a totally different, there's no way they're not going to have a roof over their head. They're not, at the very bare minimum, it's just not going to happen. So while a lot of people see what I did as risk, and for sure their mom, she had people in her ear, oh, tell him to go get a real job, go tell him this. And I will say to her credit, she said, no, he loves what he does. He's very good at what he does. He's passionate about what he does, like anything she's ever seen. And so I have firm confidence that he's going to make this thing happen. And fortunately, you know,
so let's talk about that. Because like, I think people, like our audience is primarily probably, you know, like entrepreneurial, like younger guys that, and so you had your first son. And then what is that
26 years old.
26. And so then what does that process look like to, you know, if you could talk about like what it even costs to like get something like this going, you know, and like you can't like throw your dick out on the line and like, what is it? Like,
this gym is not cheap.
Gym is beautiful,
no.
right?
Like
cheap, what did it cost to build this? You told us
all
last
in all,
time.
with the investments or just like the investment into the space and the equipment and just the rent, like probably off the bat, like $250,000.
And so, you know, but did you have your online platform going at that point?
Yes. So when I left ATG, I had a chunk of money from that. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, I was in a position and had enough people that followed me loyally that when I transitioned off and started my own thing, I saw an instant, like I basically just didn't go negative, right? So like as soon as I launched my own thing, I was already right where I was at when I was with ATG.
Nice.
So I'm fortunate in the sense that it wasn't like I was totally starting over from scratch. Mm-hmm. I within a month I was already, my salary was at what I was making at ATG basically. So it was just like nothing happened other than now it's just me on my own. There's no other, you know what I mean? So it took me a year. So this was summer of COVID. Mm-hmm. So no one knew what the fuck was going to happen. No one knew what was going on. And I said, you know what, fuck that, I'm building a gym. And people thought I was crazy, dude, because it's like summer of COVID. We're like 3-4 months into this. And like as far as most people know or think, not me in particular, but many other people, they thought the whole world was coming down on top of our heads and it was game over, right? Mm-hmm. Like there was just so much uncertainty. And I was like, I'm building a gym. So it took a year because of the supply chain and everything, like what should have probably been like a 6-month process.
Weights were ridiculously expensive.
Yeah, it was. I think it took me 10 or 11 months to get the equipment.
Did you pay a crazy premium?
Yeah, and up front too, which was like kind of the shitty part is like it was all paid. So they had their money, right? Mm-hmm. They had their money, and here I am like, it did get a little hairy for a minute because like I opened like almost 6 months after I thought I was going to. Right. Yeah. So it's like, and I put the money. So it's like when I had put out my side sort of financial plan, which don't get me wrong, it wasn't like this perfectly calculated spreadsheet, but it was just like, this is the rent. This is how many members I need to get. This is what I need to get to start generating income in the gym.
Yep.
Now I lost 6 months of that.
Wow.
Because of just the back orders from, and when I ordered my equipment, which most people can probably tell where I got it from if looking at the background of the video, but there were just no real answers. It was just like, oh, we'll just get it to you when we can, and we're doing the best we can.
I remember, because I was at my parents' house in New York, and I tried to order weights. I just couldn't, just like from Rogue, right? Yeah. Just couldn't order, they weren't there.
Oh, I mean, can you imagine the money they made the first like month of COVID?
They marked them up like crazy too.
They were printing, dog, like the Fed.
I mean, this stuff was more valuable than gold then, man.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, even on Facebook Marketplace, weights were going like $3 a pound or something crazy. It was insane, dude. It was insane.
But that whole like story is just because there will be, if anyone listening to this, like, I'll have younger guys, and again, not like I'm some old head, right? But like I'll have younger guys and be like, hey man, like I don't know, like how do I find it in me to go and just like start this thing? And then there's like, someone like you, like dude, like if you're 22, you have nothing to lose.
You just pull the trigger.
Nothing to lose.
Literally nothing.
You had a kid and 250 grand in the hole off the jump, and it's just like, man, like there's so like, because I think about it now, like it's interesting hearing your perspective because we talk about this kind of stuff, and it's like there's only so much, I don't think I would want to be like in the scene for more than another year or two or something like that, maybe a little bit longer.
You kind of have to be a little crazy to want to do this. Like for the longest time I didn't hire trainers because I just kind of know, I'm like, dude, I'm gonna invest so much into them, and they're going to do this, and they're going to fucking hate people, and they're not going to want to do training anymore. Because a lot of people get into training because they think it's like this romantic sort of job, right? Like you're around weights all day, and like most kids you talk to, they're like, yeah, train athletes. And I'm like, dude, athletes are not, it's not really a lucrative market, man. Yeah. Like I hate to, like you might make 10% of your income from athletes. Yeah. And in fact, working with athletes at ATG, they're the hardest ones to get to pay you money for your services, dude. Yeah. Like for training, for whatever reason, they rather go buy designer clothing and gold chains instead of actually invest good money into solid training. When it is such a bizarre, I think it's not all of them, but it is a lot of them.
I think people have a really skewed idea of like the world of athletics just because it's, glorified on TV.
And the thing is that they think training athletes is going to be such a much, not only just a remarkable experience, but so different to training general pop. And no way, dude. Like, for any young trainers, find you some really good general pop clients because the value of those people, without giving too much away, is going to be so much beyond what you charge them session to session.
What does your business look like? Like, what does a model look like?
Which part?
Everything. Lay it out for us.
So, I mean, I have the gym, right?
Yep. And it's on memberships?
There's memberships. And the way I'm kind of pivoting it, because this is just phase one.
Okay.
This is going to expand and grow out.
I know, we're talking about knocking that wall out.
Yeah, so the goal is to add a whole section next with, like machines. But not just any random machines, like really high quality Prime Fitness, multi-adjustable, like very, very nice. So I'll have a whole section for machines. And then phase 3 essentially would be like the way I see it is like almost like a premier recovery type of stuff. So we're talking like cold tub, sauna, just anything in that.
Cryo.
Like what people would consider like biohacking, stuff like that, right? The reason that's phase 3 is because I feel like people need to get the basics in first, and this is the basics. That stuff you're only, in my opinion, I think you're going to get the most out of it when all this stuff is in order, right? Gotcha. Like a lot of people think they're going to go red light therapy their way to good health, and I just don't think that's the freaking case, You can't be like morbidly obese and inactive and then just go expect to sit in like a salt chamber and find your way to good. Like it's just not going to happen, right? Like everyone wants passive, like these passive modalities, right? Because it's like, it's so uninvolved. I'm not saying those things don't have value. I'm saying you're going to get the most bang for your buck and you can get the most value from those modalities when everything else is in order. It's kind of like steroids.
The magic formula.
Don't do steroids unless everything else is in order. Yeah. Is your diet right? Are you sleeping well? Is your training, are you actually competent at training? Don't just be 17 and never lifted a weight in your life and next thing you know, you're like fiending on SARM.
I'm definitely going to do steroids, yeah, for sure.
Nick wants to run a cycle of tests.
Not yet. couple years. Here's how I look at it. You know, like you take anabolics, you're more likely to have girls as kids. So I think I need to have a couple sons, and then I'll do it.
Okay, yeah.
You know
I've had 2 boys, interestingly enough.
So you're up. Yeah, it's your turn.
But you've never taken anything, right?
No, I've never. So I have the gym, and to be honest with you, because the online market is really my bread and butter.
Yeah.
This was a passion project.
Gotcha.
I did this because I wanted to. I did this because
it's super dope.
When we were with ATG, we had the training in person, and we moved away from training people in person to literally everything was online. And for me, the experience just in the perspective was just missing. And I like the environment because I think that the environment itself is actually it's really the majority of the process, right? And so even ATG, I think what made ATG so successful, and which is why I went to him in the first place, was because he had a gym, which was an environment where you could foster this sort of
like-minded people.
Yeah, exactly. And you're all there together, and you're doing this thing together, right? So when I initially opened it, I was like, I'm just going to continue doing online, and I'm just going to use the gym essentially as like a studio. Like it's just going to be my studio where I can just film and whatever. And then I built it, and I was like, fuck. I was like, this is way too nice to just be in here by myself all day, essentially. And so I opened up memberships to like more general public. And then with all due respect to those people, not that they're ever going to listen to this podcast, a few months into it, I was like, this isn't really it either. Like I don't want just all these random people in here training, because I was back to, here I am 10 years in this industry, and here I am back to square one, just training people that I just am not really interested in training at this point, which sounds like for young trainers, you kind of got to do what you do, and don't, trust me, I've paid my dues, the fucking 5 a.m. to 8 p.m.
I remember getting up at 4:30 every day to go open the gym, and you'd be right in there working with my guy fucking Steve in there.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I mean, that's 5 or 6 years into the industry. Like when I started, it was 5 to 8 a.m. personal training clients, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. working at a physical therapist, and basically 5:15 p.m. to 8:15 p.m. doing group classes and more personal training. For a few years, it was that almost 5 days a week. And I would still train people on the weekends and do classes in the morning. It's not like I didn't pay my dues and just go. Obviously, once you develop as a professional, you're going to have a little bit more weight and pull to figure out what it is you really want to do. And so I've had many clients, and the age that I really like is I like high school athletes and I like college athletes. I like high school athletes because from a business perspective, every parent thinks their kid's going to be the next Michael Jordan, or Dale Earnhart or whatever.
I remember all the travel baseball leagues that just parents would pay so much money for.
Ridiculous amounts of money. Mm-hmm. They're just going to be the next best whatever sport it is that they're interested in. So parents will pay for their kids to have that experience and sacrifice their own to have that, right? So they will make it happen. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Now, because so that's kind of what it's turned into, is I basically kind of fired or let all those kind of early members phase out because the gym will be open a year in November. So, I let them kind of just phase out, and I basically just put out, I was like, this is the kind of person that I want in my gym. High school, athletes, whatever, and then that's basically all that's here at this point. I have a couple general pop people, but they're I never have been and I never will be this super hands-on coach where I feel I find it comes really from insecurity. A lot of coaches kind of stand around and they don't know what the fuck they're doing, so they just feel like they have to over-coach and just be over-involved. And it's I really believe most people, if you give them the opportunity, they're competent enough to kind of figure it out. Mm-hmm. And so I'm here and I kind of manage things, but I'm not overly in your up your butt or in your face do this, correct this, do this. I think it's just a weird control thing that trainers realize that you actually have way less of an impact on your client than you probably think.
I remember the high school strength coach just like that.
It's just way too much. And so the environment here is primarily independent. Most people that come in training here can see through their workouts, and of course I give them the workouts and everything like that. And if a problem arises or there's something they're trying to solve or they have a specific thing, then I'll narrow it down and I'll help them with those things. But for the most part, the people that come in here and train are pretty self-sufficient. And I just kind of foster the environment, and I sort of foster their relationship with training and get them to understand what it is. Because a lot of athletes think that just being significantly better in the weight room is going to make them a significantly better athlete, and I just don't think that's the case. And I think a lot of strength and conditioning coaches are so fucking far removed from the field of play that they just think how much you squat, bench, and deadlift, is what's going to make you a better athlete. And it's just not.
It's unreal to me because I, now with what I do, work with a decent amount of athletes, whatever. And it's unreal to me. And I look back at it, I'm like, man, like how much better could I have been if, and I'm, whatever, I don't have a regret around it, whatever. But man, how much better could I have been if, when you're playing your sport, you're pretty much running and jumping. Or football, football you hit too, but that's like basically a function of running.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
It's all built off running. And then everybody wants to come in and it's like, hey, do all these things to get better at running other than fucking run. Wow.
It's funny how
mind-blowing.
Strength coaches will talk about like specific adaptations and then all of a sudden tell you that like deadlifting more is just going to make you better at running. It's like such a bizarre world. People are like, do you even listen here? Do you hear yourself?
Yeah.
And don't get me, like I see like the weight room as an opportunity to just develop certain general qualities that make you better at being human. I think it gets really hectic when you try to like isolate exact movement pattern and all this. I think they just get a little bit too far down the rabbit hole. Even myself returning back to sport and being in the weight room at the same time, it's given me a lot of time to reflect on like the weight room just gives me opportunity to do things and load things and move in ways that I'm not typically getting, and it just starts to make me feel better. Like it just makes me feel better. And so that's kind of, I use the weight room as a tool. It's a means to an end for a lot of the people that I train. And now granted, I do have some kids that like just like lifting for lifting, and I can appreciate that for sure as well. But the market that I've really decided on within the gym space itself is primarily a high school athlete market. I had 2 athletes come out of this gym, both went to nationals for track and field. Track and field has probably been my most favorite athlete to train because they are super obsessed because one, there's no commercial money in it. So track and field athletes like really just love track and field. They love it.
Yeah.
Football, obviously everyone wants to go to the NFL, everyone wants to make millions of dollars,
Yeah.
everyone like that's the dream, right? Is it really because you like football or is it just like you happen to be kind of good at this thing that you could not really. I would say coaching a high school football team, maybe, I think a handful of them definitely have the potential to go to the league if they carry on. But the other ones, they're just, it's fun. And
well, I think I realized that once I dropped out of college. I was like, damn, like, did I really, like, love the sport? Or did I like being known for being good at a certain thing? Like,
you got to start questioning those certain things, right? I mean, you have to, if you can reflect on that, that's pretty cool.
Most people never have the self-awareness to ask that question.
And I did love the sport, right? But, like, now, I almost enjoy MMA more than I maybe ever did. Yeah. And maybe that's just recency bias or some shit like that. But, yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's the model of the gym, essentially. Is the way I'm trying to pivot it is almost like as like a boutique, premier, specialized sort of training facility that will be known in this area and hopefully around the world as if you're an athlete and you want to get just better, period, and somebody who actually has good perspective on what that actually means relative to being an athlete or like somebody who participates in something outside of the weight room, then this is going to be the place to come.
We should have an event.
We should. And I did have a seminar recently, which with my first with David Gray.
Yeah, he's great.
He's amazing. He's more than just amazing therapist. He's just a really great person. Mm-hmm. But it was a great event. We sold it out. I was super nervous because I was like, if I host an event, are people going to show up? You start doubting yourself. And we sold it out. And I told him, I said, how many slots do you want to sell? And he's like 20 to 30. And I said, let's do 25. Like, let's do 25 slots guaranteed. And we did it. We did it. So
that's awesome.
That was cool. Like hosting my first event here, and I want to do more of that. I really like that.
Let me know when.
I do like it. Yeah, I love it.
I get people here.
So, I'm planning on I've been asked to go out of town to many places. Bali is looking like the next place I'm going to go. I can't give too many details about it right now, but in the spring, that's a place. And then probably what's going to end up happening is since I'm headed that direction anyway, I'll probably go to Europe first, do a little thing there, go to Bali, and then hop down to like Australia, New Zealand, and then pitch back. Because now I have staff here that I'm training and working with that the place is in good hands. So.
I'm curious. Back to the gym real quick.
Yeah.
You said you spent $250 roughly to build this.
Yeah.
What does the expansion look like? Like what does it take to really get a sauna, cold plunge, maybe a steam room, that type of stuff, and all the other equipment in the build out?
So not including what it would cost for more square footage just in terms of rent. But if I'm actually looking at build-out cost, probably another 100, maybe 100. between 100 and 150,000.
That's not bad at all.
That's not too bad at all. No.
We need
a gym.
We need $600K of free cash flow so we can do this in Miami.
Yeah, it depends. Like the machines that I want are probably going to sit anywhere between
profit.
5 to 10K a piece. So, and I'm probably looking at about 10 of those. Flooring is pretty cheap, pretty easy. And throwing up a wall is pretty cheap too. So it's not gonna be too bad. The saunas, that stuff starts to get pretty expensive, especially if you go for really high quality stuff.
Would you ever do a steam room?
Yeah, I mean, that would be the goal. The goal would be to like really just make this the place that people will want to come and they can get a whole experience while they're here. They don't have to go. Like I have traveled before and done many seminars at places, and I've really been like, man, how amazing would, like, where I go train and then I hit the beach and then maybe I want to go find a place that has like a nice sauna or a cold tub. I'm like, how many times I've been like, man, how awesome would it be if it was just all in the same spot and you wouldn't have to go anywhere. It's such a good, like, and I think people with money will always have money, and I think if you cater to those, for the most part, and I think if you cater to those people, even during things like a recession and stuff, it's going to be there. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so I think if you cater to that crowd, which is what I want this to be, it'll be fine. And the online will be there, and the online will expand. I have a ton of stuff rolling out. I now have an officially on-board video guy who's going to help. We're going to start a YouTube channel. The content's going to start pumping out. It's going to be professionally edited and videoed. No, I'm not going to go down that route. But
I'm super excited to see that.
But it'll be like vlog style. We're going to shoot a lot of just the day-to-day in the gym and what it's like and the people that are training in here and just the chit-chat. Because I don't like, my style is not, let me pick this topic and teach you about this topic. Yeah. I really like the flow of like, riffing on something when a client asks me something or like in somebody and I start riffing on like that, to me makes better content for me than
we talk about this
than
all
another
the time.
squat, another how to squat video or another how to this. Like it's
we
not
talk
enough.
about this all the time. It's the stuff that kind of comes just naturally.
Yeah.
And you just pick up the phone and just record, or the camera's just on, you just record it because you just want to rant about it right now. It just kind of flows. Always does better and feels better when you're making it.
We were talking about this too because like it's been an interesting like creative block. Like obviously now content is such a huge, it's everything really for what we do and like a lot of the people we work with and help and things like that. And it's like I look at some of the stuff that I really try to like engineer, and it's like, man, if I would just taken a clip from me talking on a Zoom call with some of my clients, like that would have been the best thing I could have ever.
Some of the best content I've seen from trainers is exactly that.
Yeah.
A session that they had with a client, the epiphany that the client had, or even the epiphany that the trainer or coach had working. Like that to me is the best content. And I think even though we won't go too detailed into it, but Gary Vee, I think this new social media idea that he's had recently is this like only able to post once a day. And the whole concept of it is that like, you have to post meaningful content then, right? If you really want to like go viral on those platforms. Because I think we are in this weird position now where I see it all the time, even close friends of mine, that they were on the mark and now they're fucking way off because now they're in this weird vicious cycle of like just like creating content to create content, and it's not, there's no integrity behind the content. It's just, they just kind of start falling into the trends and making shit, and now they're trying to keep up with what's going viral.
Whatever, all that.
And it's like, and I've talked to those people and they have trouble sleeping at night because they're not actually just making good, genuine content. And so for me, I want to try to find a way where my content is always pure and it is always meaningful in some way. I don't just start posting shit to post shit just because like I feel like I have to post something. Like I understand how the algorithm works and how frequency is important and how you have to post often, but it's like at the same time I think people like you have, like for me, I have to have some integrity in what I'm doing because I take what I do seriously enough. Mm-hmm. I'm not a fucking clown in a circus. I'm not here to entertain you.
Yeah.
I'm here to really help people achieve the things that they want to achieve. I don't care how superficial.
And create the stuff that you want.
Yeah, exactly. Not create
the stuff that the algorithm tells you is going to perform the best.
And it's like if you actually look at real creators, the people that are setting the trends are people who are doing this with a lot of integrity, and they're actually making content that's meaningful to them, and it picks up, and then everyone else tries to copy or mimic that because they saw that.
It comes across super disingenuous.
You can see it. Yeah. You can see it. So it's, and a lot of people see, and of course there is some, in this industry and in this business, I've had exposure to people that have quote unquote a lot of followers and not a lot of followers. And I will say this, it's not to say you shouldn't always be chasing more eyes, because you should, but I can probably tell you from the people that I know, the people within the like 12,000 to like 50, 60, 70, 80,000 follower range on Instagram, there's probably more millionaires in that range than there are people that have 1 million plus followers. Because those people are not caught in this rat race of just creating content to create content to get more followers. They're actually creating content that has value to the people that's following them. And it doesn't take a lot of people to make a really good living or successful income to really make, like, if you want to make 6 figures, that, to me, in my opinion, that is easy to do.
Yep.
If you want to make 7 figures, I'm not personally there yet, but I have no doubt I will be there, and I really do not think it's that hard to do. And you do not have to have, I mean, even at ATG, when we did make 7 figures, we didn't have really a massive following. We just had a really
it's
loyal
like connection and then the offer.
Yeah, exactly. And so
this is the perfect launch.
I think that's important. I think it's important to just,
Absolutely.
That's why I like conversations like this. I like when you guys were like, what do you want to talk about? I was like, I don't really care. Let's just see where it goes.
Cool.
Because it's just going to.
That's typically what we do, yeah.
Yeah, it's just better. Because you just get a more genuine response, right? Mm-hmm. And people are going to relate to that more because they're going to be like, oh, yeah, this wasn't like, they don't have this little checklist that they're trying to go down.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's like.
So one thing that I genuinely want to ask you, right? And like we've covered a lot of ground. I know from our time back working together, just like in the morning, we had some really interesting clients that we would talk about a wide variety of things with. And we share relatively
had some interesting clients.
Yeah, we share relatively similar views. And so I think I would love to know if, based on your background and your philosophy on all these things with the body and entrepreneurship, and they kind of trend towards a certain worldview, I would love to know, if, in your opinion, if you could change, what do you think, we can do as people that share these sort of beliefs to make the world a better place where it is, a healthier place, a more competent place, people are more secure and happy. What would you change about the world if you could, given your worldview, or what do you think we can do?
I think number one, we just have to take more responsibility for ourselves. I think so many people are just concerned with what other people are doing, think, etc., that it's a lot of people are unwilling to do certain things that they may feel is really sits with them because they're afraid of what other people are going to think, right? It's if you know me, maybe it's to a fault, I don't give a fuck what you think. I don't give a fuck. And in a ways, it might come off very harsh and aggressive to a lot of people because I do lack a certain level of empathy for certain people because I'm I don't understand it. I don't get how you can be that small-minded about certain things. I don't care what it is.
I'm the same way, and Logan always makes fun of me for it.
Yeah, so honestly,
I don't make fun of you for it. I'm the same way. Tropical fascism.
It's an interesting question. I have to kind of sit on it a second because it's because I'm not if you actually know me and you've been around me and you train with me, I'm super welcoming. Come on in. Yeah. I will share whatever I have, whatever I can do for you. Please let me know. Mm-hmm. I just think online, people sometimes might get a different picture because I just don't have patience for the bullshit. I just don't have it, and I think that people just need to take more responsibility for themselves, number one, because just if I reflect back on my life, the times where I felt the most helpless and I just felt the most miserable about just the world, my worldview at that point, myself, was when I just wasn't taking responsibility for myself. When I didn't wake up every day and really hold myself accountable to my actions. Mm-hmm. And I felt like the world owed me something or certain people owed me something. And no one's gonna show up at your door and hand you anything, man. You have to get up and you have to go after it. And this just happens to be an industry that I'm so extremely passionate about that it kind of makes it pretty easy for me to do that. And I do think that is a big step, and I can't speak for everybody, but I think it is hard to show up and continually do something day in, day out if you don't actually really enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. There are days that I certainly have come in here and I just want to burn the place down. Absolutely. And I would be lying if anyone who's an entrepreneur or runs a business who doesn't sell that,
yeah,
they are full of shit. Yeah. There are high highs and low lows.
I talk about this all the time.
There are there are high highs and low lows, but the high highs are so freaking worth it that I couldn't be more grateful for this no matter how bad my day is, dude.
And even the low lows are kind of cool too, because
they're better than most people.
they give you this crazy perspective on like,
they do.
This is what I need to do. I'm an idiot or whatever's going on. Yeah. The reason for the low is just like gives you this crazy clarity, this crazy perspective on, okay, get your act together, like do this.
100%.
And it really kicks you into gear and probably creates those high highs.
Yeah, 100%. It gives you you're basically just giving yourself a relative viewpoint again. You're just like you need something to compare back to, and you're like, oh yeah, fuck, this doesn't feel good. I got to really kick this shit back in gear and get the ball rolling and start outflowing more, start creating more, start producing more, because when you're actually being productive, you're going to feel amazing. When you're not being productive, that's generally when you're going to just feel like shit, right? So if you're not really actually again productive in any sense, it's just you just are not going to feel good about yourself. And I think a lot of people don't feel like they're being productive, or they really just know they're not being productive, and they just kind of feel it all the time. So you know, it's some days I'll have clients where I'm just like, fuck, I just failed, dude. Like, why is this not getting through to this person, or why, you know what I mean? And it's like, at the end of the day, you have to take responsibility for yourself, but it goes the other way, and the other person on the other side also has to take responsibility for it first. And I don't think you can really get too far until both parties are doing that thing. I take responsibility for what I can do, but you have to take responsibility for what you can do. And I think as a trainer, it is hard because you're only probably with that person 5% of their week, if that. So they have so many other decisions and things that they're doing day to day that you have fucking jack all to do with, and you just have to hope and trust that they're going to go out there and do that, and they don't come in here and blame you. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like, I haven't lost the 5 pounds I want to gain. Okay, what does your time look like when you're not with me? Oh well, and then you really, you know what I mean?
Same thing goes for clients, marketing clients in business. It's like, all right, we put this plan together. You follow the plan.
Yeah, you guys really didn't help us. It was like,
well, what did you do?
40 times.
Did you make the videos or whatever? Well, I didn't do it because I felt this way. Well, why didn't you tell us? You know what I mean? It's just like it's the same thing. So
it's tough. So and you try to address it in a way where you're obviously like you have a business and you don't want to like just piss them off or whatever. But at the same time, like, I don't know. I feel like I've gotten to the point in my career where I just have that. I just feel like fuck it. Like, because if I don't just tell you how I feel about it, then I'm not being genuine with you.
It probably gets worse.
And I think at the end of the day, if you just feel like I'm just being super genuine with you, at least you're going to walk away and be able to respect that. Than just walk out of my door and be like, oh, I have no respect for that guy. If I'm like, what the fuck, dude? Then they're going to go, oh, fuck, yeah, the ball, he should talk to me, like, you know. But I think it's important. I think that's important in and of itself is
communication.
To communicate genuinely. I don't care how you think the other person's going to take it, because they're going to have their own ideas and biases and whatever. And I'm not saying sometimes you can't soften the edges, but I feel like I will have an immense amount of respect for somebody who just says what the fuck is on their mind versus somebody who just tries to sugarcoat it and beat around the bush. Like, sometimes I'll have people come in and they'll start with this, and I'm like, nope, just get to the point. Please just get to the point. And that's, boom, okay, great, cool. Now we can actually have like a legit conversation.
That's something that's super lost nowadays. Like, everybody wants to dance.
Social media, man, it makes it easy not to confront the person's on the other side of it, right? Yeah. It's like, look at it like this, commercial gyms. Why is canceling a $30 membership at a fucking commercial gym so incredibly difficult?
I've been getting charged for probably 5 months by the LA Fitness in Brickell.
Because you have to show up.
Because I don't live there anymore, so I'm not going to...
well, that's part of it.
It's a 15-minute drive, right, from where I live now, right? It's still in Miami. And granted, I'm lazy, so I'll eat it. But it's, I don't want to go out of my day to just... Can't I just click the button?
Yeah. To show up, they make you cancel it in person. So you have to show up and you have to look somebody in the face.
Yeah.
And you have to like cancel that gym membership, right? So what do they make their money on? They make the money on your guilt, knowing that you're paying a gym membership and you should show up and fucking use that thing. And now you have to go in and look like an ass clown when you're like, oh, I need to cancel my gym membership. And they're like, yeah, you haven't logged in 6 months and you've been paying for, you know what I mean? It's like,
I'm the same way.
Because they hit a part of you where you're like, yeah, you know what? I made a contract.
I got like 5 gym memberships, and I use 2 of them.
That's an extreme version. You're a different breed.
But
I'm talking about the general, most.
Driving over there and then parking downtown in Miami, or in Brickell in Miami, which is basically downtown, and going in and talking to the person who's going to take fucking forever, and just like, $50 is not worth that hour and a half.
No, it's like, well, are you sure you want to? What if we give you a free personal training session? Of course they start that whole process. But it's like. But the overarching point is just the empathy if you have to deal with another human being, which I think is very hard for people to do these days. It's really hard to confront the other person on the other side of like the communication wave, right?
For sure.
So, I have no back off with that on my clients. And now, like what I teach trainers a lot of times now is when you're young and you're just starting off, look, you kind of have to deal with the bullshit. But at some point you have to understand when it's a two-way relationship. The relationship has to work for you and it has to work for the client. It's not all about the client.
Yep.
Because I have had historically times where I've taken clients where I've extremely regretted it. And it's not because anything personal, it's just because the dynamic doesn't work. That there's just a better dynamic. I can probably have a beer with you and we'll be fine, but this thing between you and me just does not work, and you should just go somewhere where you're going to be better served. And I think it's sometimes just hard for people to accept that. They try to force those relationships a little bit, right?
Yeah.
It's for money. And it's like, but then I take that person on, and then guess who walks in the door fucking a day later? Like the ideal person. And now you don't have room for them because you just
or you take
committed.
that person on and it takes away from the other people that are ideal.
Yeah, because they just
clients.
drain you.
Yeah.
And so now your whole thing is like gone. So that's why, again, when I opened the gym, for those 6 months, I was like, oh, hell no. This is not the way I wanted this to be. And so that's why when I finally just decided, no, I'm going to have younger people in here who really like enjoy fitness and training and want to be in this environment to be here. And if you don't want to be here, don't be here. Like, period. Like, I don't have patience for it. I'm not going to come in and do the whole
Scorched Earth Jeff.
Message you.
Fuck out of here.
Why weren't you at your session yesterday?
Yeah.
It's like you're either here, you're not. And my membership is set at a premium price because it's like part of that is because it's not I can get away with the $10 a month, I'll just keep paying it. It's you're going to show up and train because of how much you're paying to be here.
Yeah.
And it's not just like, obviously it's a little bit more involved. They get programs, special, but that's just the standard that I've set here. If you're coming to train here, you're coming to train here seriously. And a lot of the athletes that I've trained over the year have gone to do really great things. Like I said earlier, I had 2 guys that were basically, one of them I've been training for 4 or 5 years. He went to nationals as a decathlete this past year, and he's now at IMG. I've trained another thrower who basically has only thrown for the past year, went to nationals, first place in javelin, I think, is also now at IMG. So I know what I'm doing, and where I'm at in my career, I'm better off serving those people than I am people who just don't want to be here. And I just don't have patience for those people. If you don't want to be here, don't be here. Like, that's just the way it is.
I love it.
I don't need to have you in here. That's the beauty of the online is like this now becomes, again, sort of a passion project. I don't have to have members piling in, knocking down my doors to get in here. It's semi-private, it's semi-exclusive. Like, I will allow anybody who wants to train here, but you have to come and train. And you have to, listen and do the things that you're asked to do. And if you're not going to do those things, then just don't be here. Yeah. There's plenty of other cheaper places for you to go where you can go waste your time or somebody else's, but it's not going to be mine. Because my energy, I only have so much, and it needs to be directed to those people who want it, not to the people who don't. So, to answer your question, I think you just have to keep speaking to the people that are there listening to you. And I think that one of the things that I've struggled with, especially on social media, and I'm sure you guys get it, you post things or you say things that people don't agree with, and they're usually super vocal, and they're in your DMs, and they're in your comments, and they're just super, they're trolls or whatever. And you kind of get defeated by them a little bit because you're like, fuck, and then they take up half your day because you're thinking about that thing that you said. And I've just gotten to a point where it's like, look, if you're reading this and it doesn't align with you, then I'm not fucking talking to you. Plain and simple. You're not my people, and I'm not talking to you.
You always got to wonder what these people have going on in their life that they have time to argue all day, send messages all day.
Yeah, just like, that's a whole thing. But it's just I'm talking to a specific group of people, and that's my people, and that's my crowd. And I've had a lot of people who initially have a lot of back off. At first, they're like, how dare you? And then a lot of people come around months later. Man, you know what? You were right. Here I am. And it's like, you can't force people to take information that they're not ready to receive, right? And so you have to just put content out there, again, that I think is meaningful, that I think is useful, so you foster a relationship in which people trust you and they trust your opinion, and then you take it from there. And you have to, and that's kind of what the content is. If you want to build a successful business, I think that's, in my opinion, it's the best way to do it. I'm not the richest guy on planet Earth, but I think I've done pretty well for myself, and I think I'm going to continue to show that I'm just, as I do better and better, I just think that that's the best way to do it. And like you guys said earlier, there's probably a million ways, for as many people as there are that many ways to get rich. And I think you just kind of have to double down on what you feel is the right thing and how you want to do it, and stay as genuine about what you're doing as possible. Because I think a lot of this stuff you see, especially in the fitness industry, you see the videos all the time. Like people doctor videos and they fake videos and there's a lot of that out there, and I think eventually that stuff catches up to you. And trends come and go, and I think if you're actually providing value, sure, you may not blow up in months like some of these guys, but where are you going to be 5-10 years down the road? I've been in this industry a long time. I'm fairly confident that I will be here another decade, where some of these guys will get washed out and forgotten about, and we won't even be having a conversation about them because they didn't provide anything of value to people. So I think it takes good information, takes a little bit harder. I think if you just look at the world right now, there's hard information and evidence about certain things that some people are just unwilling to accept, and you just have to understand that they're not going to accept it until they're ready, and they may never accept it, and you're just wasting your energy trying to get them to do so. And that goes, I think, for anything. So
a little bit of tasteful elitism. I am all for it.
Yeah,
wow.
It's an interesting.
Well,
kind of. Yeah, I mean,
I'm on the board.
You have to know your worth. You have to know your value, and you have to be reasonable about it. And don't if like, you know, even having these young trainers and coaches in here, it's like, you know, well, I'm just kind of starting, you know, like I'm like, know your worth, know your value, and be confident in it, be certain in it. You're only going to get for what you ask.
Yeah.
You're only going to get what you ask for. I mean, so it's like, you know, it's you have to remember that, you know, and it's like.
No, I said that.
No one has it all figured out, dude. Like, don't get it twisted. No one has it all figured out. Even the most successful people admit, I don't have it all figured out. But but you just have to, you know.
I think they're the ones that admit that most.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're also willing to recognize all the times that they failed, and you know what I mean. It's like.
And that's why they're there.
Yeah, 100%. So.
Do you have any other? This has been a great conversation. I'm getting hungry, to be honest, and sleepy.
It's food too. Yeah.
I'm ready to take a nap.
Do you have any last message you'd like to share with the associates of the associates?
I think that was a great message there as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can mic drop off that if you want.
I'll say this: if you're looking to start a business, I truly think that I think the highest risk is relying on somebody else. I think if you really feel like you want to wake up and you want to answer to yourself, and you're fairly confident that you can actually do that. Because don't get me wrong, there are certain people in this world that they can't wake up and do anything except answer to somebody else. Like, they just cannot navigate themselves through their own daily life. And they need somebody else to put it in place for them. But I think if you really feel like if you're even thinking about starting a business or something, I think it's kind of already there. And I think that you are like for the most part, you're going to be the lowest level of risk in your life. And so for people who said, you know, who told my kid's mom, like, tell him to hang the hat and be done, I just want to say, fuck you, man. Because, like, for me, there was no, I never saw myself as a risk. I saw no other way other than making it happen and making it work. Facts. And to me, there was absolutely no risk, and there is no risk in what I do.
It was the least risky way.
The least.
It was too risky to stay at that job.
What? Yeah. Because how many times have you heard the stories of the guy, he seems to be performing well, his metrics are good, his numbers are good. The next thing you know, he's let go from a job for whatever reason. He has no control over that. And now, you know what I mean? It's like, the only way I'm not going to make any money and not pay my bills is if I don't for some reason fucking show up inside these doors. And that's just not going to happen because I love being here. So I'm the lowest risk possible. So I really think, like, if you believe in yourself and you're confident enough in yourself, I don't see what you did as risky. Yeah. I think it was the best. Look at where you were.
Yeah.
You went off and built this thing for yourself. I answered to somebody and I got fucked in the process. And that was the decision. I said, I'm never fucking answering to anybody ever again. I thought I had some security, and there was essentially, at the end of the day, there was zero.
Yeah.
So, especially I think now with the world and the economy and everything, like, you are the lowest risk option.
You're all you got, really, at the end of the day.
You are the lowest risk option you have in every capacity of your life, not just business, but when it comes to your family and other things, you are your lowest risk option. So, fucking double down on that and invest in that, and you're your best asset. You know what I mean? And so, I think if you go into things with an open mind and you're willing to fail and you're willing to learn, and I think you're you know, it's going to take time, but it'll happen, and you're gonna you're gonna go home and you're just gonna be so happy. It doesn't matter, you know.
That's wisdom for our boy
I
Jeff.
love it.
That's amazing.
Spitting right now. I thought you were gonna say squat heavy, but that's even better.
Nah.
Episode 18.
Episode 18. Where can they find you?
Instagram at the Flexible, THEFLEXI.
It'll be in the description.
BULL. Yeah.
Link
Pretty
in
much right
description.
there. Strength Culture is the name of the gym in Clearwater, Florida. So if you're listening and
Dope
you're
gym.
Ever in
Dope
the area
gym.
you want to drop by, people are always welcome. The doors are open. I know I may have scared some people off, but
Nah.
I scared the right people off and attracted the right people in.
Exactly.
Yeah, come train. You're been a huge inspiration to me and someone I've learned a ton from and still do every day. Just with the random shit I'll see you post, I'm like, oh damn, like that's a good idea. Like he's right, and I'll think about something. So
it's a rabbit hole sometimes.
Yeah, I appreciate all that, and man, thanks for coming on. It was a blast.
I appreciate it, man. It's always good catching up. And
of course.
Second time now
Yes,
catching
sir,
up with
of
you
course.
officially. So thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Yeah, all the links in the description. You can find us there. Episode 18 is done.
Boom.
That was great. You were spitting at the end, dude. Let's go. Great, man. Thanks for coming on, bro.